Hiya.
Thank you so much. I really like the lecture. My question is, there are a lot of vegan groups, and some of the vegan groups have different points why to do it and why veganism, and some reasons are more important for some groups, and some reasons like the health reasons, like the environment or the animal rights. What's your view on this? Because I think some unification is required, because some of the vegan groups are not really working together because of this.
No, kind of ideological divide kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
So what's your view on this?
Well, my stock answer to that question is that the research, and there has been some but not a lot, the research suggests that it doesn't really matter why someone goes vegan or becomes plant-based. But if they don't engage with the ethics of veganism, and as early as possible, then they're liable to go back. And that's what the evidence suggests. That, because that's why the phrase ethical vegan came into being, and of course that's a difficult phrase, right? But that's where if you're an ethical vegan, the chances of you kind of going back are slimmer, much slimmer than health first and then environment second. So that's the general thing that I say. And so it seems to me that any group that starts with health shouldn't stay there very long. And any outreach that starts with health, we shouldn't stay there very long, because I mean we're a movement, we've got to move people. And one thing that we know, or at least there's a good suggestion of, is that when they move to ethical vegan, then they tend to stay. Everything else is a bit wobbly. Yeah.
Could you talk a small bit more there about the cruelty, the undesirability of the allusion to cruelty? Like, I get the exploitation, how that's a good thing to put in, but the cruelty, you know, just that surprises me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, if you take someone like Tom Reagan, who wrote The Case for Animal Rights,
yeah.
the difference between cruelty claims and rights claims and everything is that, generally speaking, you've got a situation where the animal rights people claim that our fellow animals are rights bearers. And that means then that anything we do to them is a rights violation.
Okay.
What animal welfare tends to do is tends to try and regulate the use of our fellow animals while they're being used. So it'll try to reduce the amount of cruelty whilst they're being farmed.
So focusing on the cruelty.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you can get into a cruelty conversation, which is where you don't want to be, because you want to say, well, look, you know, we are malicious. We oppose the use of them. So, you know, use and treatment are the two divides. So if you're focused on treatment, see, and that's another part of the story. Yeah, where the Vegan Society moderated. They started to work quite closely in the 1960s and 70s in particular with compassionate wool farming. This is in England. Yeah. Now, compassionate wool farming was founded by a dairy farmer, right? And so they were opposed to intensive farming, and that still, there's a big hangover still. People talk about factory farming all the time, whereas the vegan case is against farming of our fellow animals, right? Yeah, but there's still a big focus on factory farming. That's the big thing. Now, there are some numerical reasons why that would be. At the same time, you have to be careful. You know, I'm a sociologist, and sociologists see social movements as claims makers. We're claims makers in civil society. We see a problem, we identify a problem, we claim it to be a problem, and then we make claims about it. You know, and so that's how I see it. And if you get bogged down in cruelty, you can end up in a place that you don't really want to be, because it's not as Reagan would say, it's not the fundamental wrong.
Yeah. It's like the slave people saying, you know, I treat my slaves really well.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that from an animal welfare point of view, is, oh, good on you, mate. From an animal rights point of view, it makes a difference.
Okay.
Sorry, I was going to ask a similar question about the cruelty word. Is that not what wakes people up, though, using that? If you're like, I had someone at work recently, oh, why are you vegan? So I just said, because I don't do cruelty to animals. And that's what wakes them up to go, oh, well, neither do I. I'm going, well, then it leads into a conversation about, well, what do you think of smart houses? About what do you think you know.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it kind of leads into.
yeah, I understand the point, and a lot of people make that point. What I would suggest there is that whatever you said might lead to a conversation, but if you want to start with cruelty claims, then it's our job to move it away from there. You know, it's a little bit like the health and
it's
the ethics.
Start.
Yeah, you can start it there, but don't stay very long, and then point out the fact that veganism is about ending the fundamental wrong that we commit against our fellow animals. And that is not just being cruel, because you ask anybody, they're against animal cruelty, right? And they'll even say they're against animal abuse. But then when you say, okay, well, let's talk about use in general, then you find that they're not there, because they are a product of their culture. And the ideology of animal welfarism is it's morally okay to use them, it's not morally okay to be cruel to them, right? And so the promise of animal welfare is non-cruel use, right? Now, the vegan case, or the animal rights case, is it doesn't matter, because even if you had non-cruel use, you still got the use, and that is a rights violation. So, you know, if you feel comfortable starting there, I would suggest you figure out a way of moving from there, just so they can understand that that's not the fundamental position.
That's fine, as long as they want to carry on and have a conversation with those people, you know, it's kind of, all right.
Yeah.
They don't want to get into the in-depth.
I mean, I've
so
had loads of
get away
conversations
from
on the street. I mean, we're still doing street work in Dublin on a Saturday, and I move the conversation. And if they bring it back, which they often do, because everything slides back into welfare, because that's what they know.
Yeah.
That's what they're taught, isn't it? Yeah. You know, we're all taught, don't be cruel.
Yeah.
Right. And everybody agrees with that sentiment. I want to eat my meat, but I don't want to be cruel. That's everybody's position. But they also think it's something that is feasible, and they also think it's something that's common, which is why you still get the idea that if you find a cruel farmer, it's because they're one bad apple. I mean, there's been thousands of one bad apples since, but you know, that's the attitude. Generally speaking, non-cruel use is the norm. And most people can kind of live with that. We've got to shift the paradigm in terms of how we talk to people, and not for them to focus on that. I mean, they can start with it, as I said, but you know, well, our fundamental position is the end of, you know, animal use. And that's how the pioneers saw the word exploitation, interchangeable with use. So that's where I go with that. I just try and move it, and every time they come back to it, you say, well, that's animal welfare though, you know, that, and then you can explain the difference between rights and welfare, which a lot of people resonate with. Oh yeah, I've had lots of people say on the street, oh yeah, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
And if you can get people to think that, that's great.
Yeah, I just on that, I often find in very short conversations at work and stuff like that, the word cruelty kind of shocks people into thinking about themselves. In that very, but to move on to it, move on from there is how I do.
You must move on.
But it's the one thing that they don't want to be accused of cruelty.
No, but if you
then move it.
If you ask the first question, are you opposed to animal cruelty? They'll say yes. If you then say, can you give me an example?
Yeah.
They'll talk about cats and dogs and horses.
Yeah.
The privileged species. They'll never talk about chickens and pigs and cows. Because that's the ideology of animal welfare, which is why you've got the ISPCA, the RSPCA, those type. They focus on cruelty, the prevention of cruelty. Doesn't mean ending the use of, it means taking the cruelty out of the use.
Yeah, and they don't even do that very well.
Yeah.
I had the argument with one of the RSPCA guys in my area. They were taking these chickens away because they lost their feathers, and they were all in some cattle farm or a chicken rooster, whatever you want to call it. And I had 30,000 chickens in the one building.
Yeah.
And I said, that's not for us. I said, no, it's not. I said, the other one up there has 160,000 chickens in. I said, so what are you doing with these? He says, well, these are going to be looked after. So what do you mean? Someone can just take them off our hands. And he said, all right. He said, and he said, they can lay eggs for them. I said, but but that goes against the whole principles of being vegan. He said, but I won't be eating this, but other people can.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
No, no.
That's still cruelty in one respect.
Well, it's certainly animal use. And, you know, you see, one of the major problems that we have as a movement is that people orient towards our fellow animals as though they're items of property. You know, I mean, that has caused so much trouble over the years and so many rights violations because, you know, we think of other animals as items of property. And there is a lawyer in USA called Gary Francione, and he says that's the #1 problem, that people see them, the other animals, as property. And if we could stop them doing that, then we'd be miles ahead of where we are now, right? Because, you know, it's kind of, well, that's not a problem, the welfarists will say. It's the cruelty, it's not the ownership of them. And we'd say, well, yeah, but the fundamental rock, you see, you go back to it all the time. So, yeah, I mean, I get that. In fact, Back into Daylight is here, which is an animal sanctuary in County Meath. And about 3 years ago, I got a call off the owner, Declan, and he said, we've got 24 hours to rescue 2,000 chickens. And what it was, I think what happened was there was a new free-range farm, and I think they had a contract with the slaughterhouse for 800 birds, but I think they had 1,000. And so they were trying to work out what to do with the 200. And so they said to the sanctuary, so emotional blackmail, come and rescue them, and you've got 24 hours before the trucks arrive, as it were, or you know, they're gone. And so we did that. You know, I had a van at the time. It was converted into cages, and so was Declan's one. We went and got them, and they were in a terrible state. And these were high-quality, free-range hens, right? And it was the first time that these farmers had done it. And they had a big lush pasture, and as usual with a lot of the free range means that they're in a big barn, and they open the door every now and again. And half of them, more than half, don't come out. And especially in this one, because they had a big ramp to go down, which had sharp kind of bits of plastic on it. So it hurt their feet to actually go out. So very few did, you know. Now whether they've changed all of that, it's just that they become, just like human prisoners, they become institutionalized. And, you know, they don't want to go out, you know. And so all this stuff about, well, we've moved to cage-free or we've moved to free range, in ethical terms it doesn't mean anything, but also in practical terms it often doesn't. And so that's why they lose their feathers, because free-range hens are not supposed to do that. You know, I mean, there's bound to be some genuine, old-fashioned rural farms in Ireland where they've probably got genuine free-range hens, you know, and they put them into the little coops at night and all that and let them out. They're not going to lose their feathers because it's not the concentrated thing. So the label doesn't mean anything anymore. You know, you see cage-free or like barn, all those kind of words, these are just industry ways of trying to fool the consumer.
Yes, corn-fed.
Yeah, all that, yeah, kind of, you know, oh, how lovely, you know. I always remember when I was at university, I never forget this. I was in the supermarket, and it was near the university, and there was a couple, and the guy got a box of eggs, and you know, you have a quick look to see if they were still intact. And he opened one, and they weren't free range or anything, so these were battery eggs. He opened it, and there was a little feather that had become stuck on one of them. And he turned to his partner and stroked the feather and said, "Ah," right? And I thought, you haven't got a clue, have you, mate? You know, you haven't got a clue what you're looking at. You know.
When was that?
Oh, that was in the end of the 90s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, when I was writing my MA and PhD at the time, I was in North Wales. But right, what's the time, anyone?
5-2.
Oh, right, well, that's
51, 1651.
Oh, well, that's when I'm supposed to finish them, so that's good. So I want to thank you very much for coming.
Yeah.
I want to thank you, because I've been telling everybody that nobody's going to be here for the for the first one of every conference can be a problem, you know. So thanks very much for coming.
And there's